Hopefully you can hear me. Let me know if you can hear me because I've been having problems with my headphones. Why isn't that big? That's weird. Okay. Yeah, dude, I don't know what's going on, but I know there's somebody there. There's people there. Hi. Hi, people. Okay, I'm not going to worry about that right now. Hi. Okay. Again, I'm going to show you the book. Very interesting book. Chapter 5. Injecting Ideology. We are only being told what they want us to know. Probably the most effective method of control ever discovered is simple information management. This technique consists of withholding information, disseminating lies, disinformation, parentheses, or providing misdirection so that we cannot fully comprehend the reality that we deal with and the forces that shape our lives. These deceptive views are projected to the populace through various communications media, but primarily by television, radio, motion pictures, newspapers, magazines, and the internet. So remember, this was written in 1999, just when, oh good, I'm glad you can hear me. Oh, cool. All right. Tell me her name, though, so I know if she comes my way. Kat. Okay. So this was written in 1999. So I'm going to read that again. These deceptive views are projected to the populace through various communications media, but primarily by television, radio, motion pictures, newspapers, magazines, and the internet. And now, cell phones. The Black Mirror. Okay, Black Mirror technology. That's what I'm going to say. As civilizations become more complex and as the need for invisible government has been increasingly demonstrated, the technical means have been invented and developed by which public opinion may be regimented. While with printing press and newspaper, the telephone, telegraph, radio, and airplanes, ideas can be spread rapidly and even simultaneously across the whole of America. We are governed, our minds are molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of. Whatever attitude one chooses to take towards this condition, it remains a fact that in almost every act of our daily lives, whether in the sphere of politics or business, our social conduct or our ethical thinking, we are dominated by a relatively small number of persons, a trifling fraction of our 120 million who understand the mental processes and social patterns of the masses. I don't know what 120 million is, but okay. Maybe at that time, 20 years ago, there were 120 million people in the US? That doesn't sound right. Maybe so. Maybe we have 200 million in the last 20 years. That would be freaking amazing. It is they who pull the wires which control the public mind and who harness social forces and contrive new ways to bind and guide the world. Oh, that's a quote. You guys, I skipped an entire paragraph. I can't believe I did that. Hello, because I'm looking up and down. Let me go back and read this because that was 120 million in the year 1928. So that makes a lot more sense. Let me read that again. Okay. A gauge of elitist thinking on the topic of media control is provided in the work of Edward Bernays, a close friend of New World Order mastermind H.G. Wells. Bernays wrote Crystallizing Public Opinion in 1928, Propaganda in 1928, and The Engineering of Consent in 1955. In Propaganda, Bernays wrote, as civilization becomes more complex, and as the need for invisible government has been increasingly demonstrated, the technical means have been invented and developed by which public opinion may be regimented. With printing press and newspaper, the telephone, the telegraph, radio, and airplanes, ideas can be spread rapidly and even simultaneously across the whole of America. We are governed, our minds are molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of. Whatever attitude one chooses to take toward this condition, it remains a fact that in almost every act of our daily lives, whether in the sphere of politics or business, our social conduct, or our ethical thinking, we are dominated by a relatively number of small persons, a trifling fraction of our 120 million, who understand the mental processes and social patterns of the masses. It is they who pull the wires which control the public mind, and who harness social forces and contrive new ways to bind and guide the world. Bind. Far from disapproving of this manipulation, Bernays felt that it was vital for the masses to be controlled by propaganda. The conscious and, quote, the conscious and intelligent manipulation of organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in a democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government which is true ruling power in our country. Bernays also participated in the crafting of American psychological warfare programs. It is hardly surprising that he was put in charge of the CBS Communications Network in its early days. The single factor that most enables control of the media and its use as a tool of propaganda is monopolistic ownership. 98% of the 1,700 daily newspapers in America are owned by fewer than 15 corporations, with Time Inc. taking in about 40% of the total revenues. Now, remember, this is written a while ago. The three major TV networks at the time, ABC, CBS, and NBC, still have the majority of the television watching audience. This is so totally true back in the year 2000. Monopolistic ownership is reinforced through additional interlocking controls and fail-safe systems. These include the membership of media bosses and workers in such conclaves as the Council on Foreign Relations, Skull and Bones, the Trilateral Commission, and the Bilderbergers, among other groups. Many of the members of these organizations hold memberships in other related elitist social, political, and business groups, ensuring coherent action amongst these ruling classmates. Membership in one or more of these groups is virtually required to obtain entree to the highest levels of success in the Western world. One is reminded of the statement of ex-CIA Director William Colby, although he was speaking specifically of the American intelligence community. Quote, socially as well as professionally, they clicked together. forming a sealed fraternity. They ate together at their own special favorite restaurants. They partied almost only among themselves. Their families drifted to each other, so their defenses did not always have to be up. In this way, they increasingly separated themselves from the ordinary world and developed a rather skewed view of that world. Their own dedicated double life became the proper norm, and they looked down on the life of the rest of the citizenry. According to author G. William Domhoff in The Higher Circles, quote, "The power elite have created and developed that wonderful field of public relations on an incredible scale. Some of the early practitioners of this art helped scrub up the images of the robber barons' families. Others specialized in the corporate image and the corporate conscience. Functionally speaking, the public relations departments of large corporations, in conjunction with the giant public relations firms that service many corporations, have become the early warning system of the upper class, picking up and countering the slightest remark or publication that makes funny lines on their sensitive radar. Thanks to them, public opinion is well monitored. With an assist, of course, from the alert social scientists in certain university institutes financed by the big corporations and foundations. Wayward opinions, once detected, are duly corrected by a barrage of printed matter and public pronouncements. This was written 20 years ago, people. Intelligence agency penetration of the media began at the same time as the forming of the America media conglomerates in the first half of this century, so in the first 1900 to 1950. One of the first and most successful control operations of the media was launched in 1919 with the creation of RCA by Westinghouse, Morgan Guaranty and Trust, General Electric, and the United Fruit Company. In 1929, David Sarnoff, a close associate of Tavistock Institute, was appointed head of RCA. Shortly afterward, British intelligence set up the Black Chamber intelligence operation in the RCA building in New York. Under the direction of Sir William Stevenson, codename Intrepid, and General Marlborough Churchill, a relative of Winston Churchill. General Churchill would later be instrumental in the founding of the Macy Organization, which would be used as a funding conduit for the CIA MK-Ultra mind control operations. Macy's. All three major American television networks were offsprings of RCA. The information war entered a new realm of effectiveness in the 1930s when the Rockefeller Foundation launched secret psychological war projects to shape public opinion. According to Christopher Simpson, author of Science of Coercion, quote, "They were a remarkably tight circle of men and women who shared several important conceptions about mass communications research. They regarded mass communication as a tool for social management and a weapon in social conflict, and they expressed common assumptions concerning the usefulness of quantitative research, particularly experimental and quasi-experimental effects research, opinion surveys, and quantitative content analysis as a means of illuminating what communication is and improving its application to social management. At about the same time that the Rockefellers' media manipulation programs went into overdrive, the Office of Strategic Services and the Office of War Information began recruiting the best and the brightest from American intelligentsia for initiation into the ranks of spookdom, as well as inserting their agents into powerful positions in the mass media, in politics, and in the universities. A survey of Office of War Information alumni working in the media in the early 1950s included, quote, the publishers of Time, Look, Fortune, and several dailies, editors of such magazines as Holiday, Coronet, Parade, and the Saturday Review, editors of the Denver Post, New Orleans Times, Picayune, and others. The heads of the Viking Press, Harper & Brothers, and Farr, Straus & Young, 2 Hollywood Oscar winners, a 2-time Pulitzer Prize winner, the board chairman of CBS, and a dozen key network executives. President Eisenhower's chief speech writer. The editors of Reader's Digest International Editions, at least 6 partners of large advertising agencies, and a dozen noted social scientists, chief of the U.S. government's overt psychological warfare effort from 1950 to 1952, and later dean of the Columbia Graduate School of Journalism, and founder of the Columbia Journalism Review. I mean, talk about it being everywhere at every moment, right? During the 1950s, American mass media interlocked directly with the CIA. The agency feeding information to journalists in exchange for their own intelligence developed domestically and abroad. Reporters were employed by the CIA to deliver communiques as well as money to contacts and to toe the agency line in their own dispatches. The CIA even ran a training program teaching reporting skills to agents. You know who comes to mind? CNN and Anderson Cooper. He's a CIA agent, just FYI, in case you didn't know. Okay. It is virtually impossible to determine the exact number of American journalists who are currently on the CIA or other intelligence agency payrolls, much less who are informally slipped information. But in 1977, Carl Bernstein, in an article for Rolling Stone, guessed the number at that time to be about 400 in 1977. Bernstein noted a long-standing relationship of the agency with the CBS network and former CIA director Alan Dulles, friendship with the CBS president, CFR member William Paley. Look him up. The president of CBS News from 1954 to 1961. CFR member Sig Mickelson acted as Paley's liaison with the CIA, using a direct telephone line that bypassed the network switchboard and connected directly with the agency. The chief directors and news anchors of CBS have also been CIA connected, according to Bernstein. The journalist wrote that over the years, the CBS network provided cover for CIA employees, including at least one well-known foreign correspondent and several stringers. It supplied outtakes of news films to the CIA, established a formal channel of communications between the Washington bureau chief and the agency, and allowed reports by CBS correspondents to be routinely monitored by the CIA. This is really hard for me to read, not because it's hard to read. I mean, it is because of the way he wrote it, but, it's very intellectual, not so flowy in the words. But also because he's reporting the facts, and like for me, tell it like it is, right? It's right here in this book that was written before the internet, really. The internet was just personal computers just came online in the year 2000 or the year 1998 or something like that, and this was published in 1999. So this is before all of it, really. So it's interesting because this is like the history, of what has gone on before the internet was introduced to the mainstream population. The New York Times and its publisher, CFR member, Council of Foreign Relations, CFR, member Arthur Hayes Sulzberger, frequently liaised with the CIA, providing cover for at least 10 CIA agents during the 1950s and 60s. The publisher of the Washington Post, CFR member Katharine Graham, was close friends with CIA directors Dulles and Casey and employed a number of reporters who worked with the CIA. Henry Luce, the founder of Time and Life, was a friend of CIA director Allen Dulles and looked the other way when some of his reporters attended CIA briefings. C.D. Jackson, a leading exec at Time Life, lived a double life as a mover and a shaker in American psychological warfare efforts. According to CIA files, ABC News was used as a cover by agents during the 1960s. Bernstein also noted the following news organizations as having provided cover for CIA agents: the New York Herald Tribune, the Saturday Evening Post, Scripps Howard Newspapers, Hearst Newspapers, the Associated Press, United Press International, the Mutual Broadcasting System, Reuters, and the Miami Herald. Another means of CIA control over the media is through outright ownership. The New York Times in 1997 reported that the CIA owned more than 50 radio stations, wire services, magazines, and newspapers, with the majority of them being overseas. Many foreign news agencies were also infiltrated with CIA agents. Now remember, this was written about the 50s in the 90s. Okay, just saying. Imagine now. Many foreign news agencies were also infiltrated with CIA agents, and more than 1,000 books that had been subsidized or produced outright by the CIA had been put in print by American publishers. Given these extensive involvements, would it be too much to venture that the American media, that bastion of freedom and independence, holds CIA credentials? Another means of influencing public opinion has been through the Advertising Council, tax-exempt, non-governmental agency whose membership is heavily weighted with the members of the Council on Foreign Relations. Among the projects that the Advertising Council has furthered are ones aimed at the creation of a one world government, including world peace through world law, and various public service announcements promoting the United Nations. A technique for influencing public opinion is polling organizations, which have demonstrably been shown to slant their public opinion questions in order to achieve desired results, but which may also be engaged in outright deception and alteration of statistics in the service of whomever is paying them. During the recent bloody American intervention in Yugoslavia, public opinion pollsters placed approval of the war by the public at 73%. while an informal poll that I and some friends conducted determined exactly the opposite, that only 1/3 of Americans supported the bombing. I know that we are not lying. Good job, dude. Probably the most infamous example of media manipulation took place after the assassination of American President John F. Kennedy. A CIA memorandum dated April 1st, 1967, was issued on the use of agency assets in the media in countering criticism of the Warren Report on the assassination of John F. Kennedy, a murder that many researchers have in fact laid at the doorstep of American intelligence itself. Among the ways to answer and refute those critical of the Warren whitewash the CIA suggested were a variety of ploys, including saying that a critic's research was faulty, that they had a financial interest in writing negatively on the Warren Report, and that conspiracy on the large scale often suggested would be impossible to conceal. Let me read that again. Among the ways to answer and refute those critical of the Warren whitewash the CIA suggested were a variety of ploys, including saying that a critic's research was faulty, that they had a financial interest in writing negatively on the Warren Report, and that conspiracy on a large scale often suggested would be impossible to conceal. Of course, this was in the horse and buggy days before the expediency of calling someone a conspiracy nut existed. Man. Within the last year, another example of media manipulation may have saved President Bill Clinton from impeachment. Due to an incident that has come to be known as Rapegate. During the impeachment trial of Clinton, Juanita Broaddrick, referred to as Jane Doe number 5, in the Starr Report, was interviewed at length by NBC correspondent Lisa Myers. Broaddrick alleged that in 1981, Bill Clinton had raped her in an Arkansas motel room when she had been working for his campaign for governorship. This is not an incredible allegation, since Clinton has been accused of rape and forcing his sexual attentions on women on numerous occasions in the past. The first time that we know of during his studies at Oxford University in England in the 1960s. Wow. Think about what that just said. This is not an incredible allegation, since Clinton had been accused of rape and forcing his sexual attentions on women on numerous occasions in the past, the first time that we know of during his studies at Oxford University in England in the 1960s. There were several reliable witnesses to corroborate Broaddrick's story, including a nurse who treated her for injuries inflicted during the alleged rape. NBC completed the interview with Broaddrick prior to the end of his impeachment trial, but the network suppressed airing the story until the trial was over. After the story had been picked up by the Wall Street Journal and other media outlets. Thus, Congress and the American public were prevented from making a fully informed decision about the suitability of Clinton as president. Media management does not always have to be so dramatic. Simple distraction the circuses, part of the historic bread and circuses formula, is another effective technique. The dissemination of entertainment, popular culture, quote unquote, and useless factoids has channeled public attention away from far more important issues such as poverty, human rights abuses, human trafficking, right? The equitable distribution of wealth of the world. True political representation for the vast majority of humans. And media control by the elite. This is one of the main functions of the television. Television, which is in essence a propaganda box spewing out the positive, drug-like reinforcements of sex, violence, and simulated social interaction. Simulated social interaction, SSI, Social Security Insurance. Simulated social interaction, Social Security Insurance. As an example of distraction by the media, the political struggle of Black Americans for economic and political well-being has been effectively derailed by the safe to the establishment energetics of gangsta rap culture, drugs, and sports, preparing Black youth to take their place in the world as drug addicts and latter-day step-in fetches struggling in grinding McPoverty. He's just making the point that they're setting people up for failure. Journalist John Swinton, one of the most respected of the breed at the time, described the situation succinctly when he gave a toast at the New York Press Club in 1953. Swinton said, "There is no such thing as this date of the world's history in America as an independent press. You know it and I know it. There is not one of you who dares to write your honest opinions, and if you did, you know beforehand that it would never appear in print. I am paid weekly for keeping my honest opinion out of the paper I am connected with. Others of you are paid similar salaries for similar things, and any of you would be so foolish as to write honest opinions would be out on the streets looking for another job. If I allowed my honest opinions to appear in one issue of my paper, before 24 hours my occupation would be gone. The business of journalists is to destroy the truth, to lie outright, to pervert, to vilify, to fawn at the feet of Mammon, and to sell his country and his race for his daily bread. You know it and I know it, and what folly is this toasting an independent press? We are the tools of rich men behind the scenes. We are jumping jacks. They pull the strings and we dance. Our talents, our possibilities, and our lives are all the property of other men. We are intellectual prostitutes. Another media strategy employed in the latter half of the 20th century is subliminally embedded messages. There are a number of methods by which subliminals can be injected into a communication. In electronic media, these include the use of sub-audible sounds, backwards masking, tachistoscopic flashes, image associations, and other techniques. Print media primarily utilizes embedded messages, image association, and symbolism. Some verified examples of media subliminals are: in 1956, the British Broadcasting Company, now BBC, transmitted a subliminal message during the course of a regular scheduled television program. When the program was over, viewers were queried whether they had noticed anything unusual about the program. Only a few persons responded, and still fewer able to identify the subliminal message that had been broadcast. This, of course, is not an indication that the subliminal was unsuccessful. The viewer is not supposed to be able to perceive consciously what the message is, only be influenced subconsciously. In September of 1957, American advertising executive James Vicari told a gathering of journalists that subliminal advertising had been successfully tested. For a period of 6 weeks, subliminal messages to drink Coca-Cola and to eat popcorn had been shown 45,699 to 445,699 patrons at a movie theater. The projected subliminals had been brief in duration, 1/3000th of a second, and had been projected every 5 seconds during the airing of motion pictures. Wow. It was reported that popcorn sales rose among 60%, while Coca-Cola sales increased almost 20%. At about the same time as Vicari's announcement, the Los Angeles television station KTLA announced that they would be commencing with subliminal broadcasts. They announced it. See, they told everybody ahead of time. Wasn't that sweet of them? So nice of them. In order to quell public concerns, the station indicated that programs bearing subliminal messages would be announced prior to airing, and that they would only carry non-commercial subliminals, at least initially. The general manager of the station, Lou Arnold, said, "We'll flash on something like 'Join the Army' or 'Give to the March of Dimes.' The next step would be to promote our own shows. Then, and I have a feeling this is a long way off, we might go into the commercial end of it." According to a press release from the station, however, the subliminals were reportedly canceled without having commenced, because they announced it probably and people freaked out. Also in 1957, radio station WTWO in Bangor, Maine, began running subliminal messages in station promo announcements. The content was, "If you have seen this message, write WTWO." And it was flashed thousands of times for 1/80th of a second during a 1-month period. The experiment was considered unsuccessful, so the station reported since there was no increase in mail. On January 19, 1958, an undisclosed subliminal message was flashed across the television screen 352 times during a CBC TV network program. A spokesperson for the CBC said the experiment was inconclusive. Also in 1958, sub-audio phantom spots were broadcast during radio programs. Broadcasting stations that ran such spots included stations WCCO in Minneapolis, WAAF in Chicago, KLTI in Longview, Texas, KOL in Seattle, and KYA in San Francisco. In 1958, researchers in the Media and Sociology Department of Indiana University ran subliminal experiments on both closed-circuit television and broadcasts of WTTV in Bloomington, Indiana. Okay, this goes on and on and on. Let me see. Oh, no, wait, hold on. Indiana University crops up surprisingly frequently in research into mass control, and was the home base for sexologist Alfred Kinsey, who will be profiled in the next chapter, as well as a recruiting grounds for death evangelist Jim Jones. That's fascinating. The effect of subliminal motivational techniques did not escape American intelligence agencies. It is documented that the CIA, for one, looking into the use of subliminals, began in 1958. So, this is all about, I want to stop and talk for a minute because I feel like, subverting sex is the next fucking chapter. Love it. Actually, we're pretty close. I'm going to end this. I'm going to get through this. it's such a good thing to read this stuff and to like actually hear that this stuff has been going on for a really long time, because yeah, dude, it's so much deeper than what people realize is actually happening. Like, this has all been going on behind the scenes for years and years and years and years and years. And trauma-based mind control, subliminal messaging, we all know that this has been happening, right? But what we didn't realize is that it would affect our personal lives, because we were just, free to do whatever we want, all the meanwhile they've been planning this all along, right? So here's an interesting one back towards the 90s now. In 1997, in Japan, more than 700 children went to the hospital after viewing the popular cartoon series Pokemon. Remember Pokemon Go, you guys? Just recently. The children experienced convulsions and in at least one case stopped breathing, supposedly because of a scene 20 minutes into the cartoon that triggered photosensitive epilepsy with strobing lights. According to one report, Tokyo doctors described the effect of the scene as similar to hypnosis. There's another possibility, other than epileptic seizures, that may have affected the children, that may have not occurred to many. Russian Major I. Chernyshev, writing in the military journal Orientier in February 1997, referred to the experimentation by the Japanese in noiseless cassettes. Chernyshev claimed that the Japanese had developed techniques for patterning messages at infra-low frequencies, extra low frequencies, ELFs, over music, messages that could be used for mind control. A related technique was described by the Russian doctor Viktor Solntsev of the Bauman Technical Institute at Moscow. In a Russian military publication, Solntsev described a computer virus termed Virus 666. Sound familiar, guys? The virus is displayed visually in every 25th frame on a visual display, including television or computer, and supposedly broadcasts colors that put the viewer into a hypnotic trance. If exposure is continued, it can result in arrhythmia of the heart. That's fascinating. This is not simply Solntev's fantasy, but has been spoken of by other Russian scientists. It is suggested that Virus 666 can be used subliminally to influence a viewer's thinking and perceptions. Another secret subliminal technique is described by an informant of the author who chooses to remain anonymous. He wrote on April 14, 1999, quote, "I went back to college for the summer to work on my media degree." Medea, by the way, is a Greek goddess. I had hoped for a while to get into TV and film production and become a movie director. Anyway, I happened upon some of the TV technicians there discussing a rumor that they had heard about a new subliminal process that was being called fractional framing. And as I was into TV technology at the time, I joined their brief discussion to just find out more for curiosity's sake. As they described it, fractional framing is very similar to the regular movie subliminal cut. In the subliminal cut, a whole frame of the film is removed and replaced with an ad or an order. And though you cannot see it with your eye, it affects your subconscious and you end up craving the thing advertised or doing what was ordered. However, for fractional framing, rather than taking out a whole frame on the TV screen, all they do is replace a few of the 500 lines on the TV screen, which makes it harder to detect, but it appears to be just as effective. Being interested in subliminals, which we had discussed in my various media classes, I asked if there was any proof of these rumors. One of the technicians insisted that he had heard it, that it had been experimented with on the public at KIRO TV Channel 7 in Seattle. As in subliminal broadcasting at this time, the great majority of the information that we receive from major media is designed to keep us confused, entrapped, and to motivate us without our knowledge. As Professor Noam Chomsky wrote in Chronicles of Dissent, quote, "Our system works much differently and much more effectively than the communist system. It's a privatized system of propaganda, including the media, journals of opinion, and in general, including the broad participation of the articulate intelligentsia, the educated part of the population. The more articulate element of those groups, the ones who have access to the media, including the intellect journals, and who essentially control the educational apparatus, should properly be referred to as a class of commissars. That's their essential function, to design, propagate, and create a system of doctrines and beliefs which will undermine independent thought and prevent understanding and analysis of institutional structures and their functions." At times, the controllers themselves are even willing to admit the manipulation, as David Rockefeller did when addressing the Trilateral Commission in June of 1991. Quote, here we go, folks. "We are grateful to the Washington Post, the New York Times, Time Magazine, and other great publications whose directors have attended our meetings and respected their promises of discretion for almost 40 years. It would have been impossible for us to develop our plan for the world if we had been subject to the bright lights of publicity during those years. But the world is now more sophisticated and prepared to march toward world government. The supranational sovereignty of an intellectual elite and world bankers is surely preferable to the national national autodeterminism practiced in past centuries." I'm going to read that again. The supranational sovereignty of an intellectual elite and world bankers is surely preferable to the national autodeterminism practiced in past centuries. Surely, but media was never a singly effective enough tool for you, Mr. Rockefeller, nor for the other rulers of this world. You have sought other means for control. That's the end of that chapter. The next chapter, chapter 6, is going to be subverting sex. So that's going to be on another day. So, as you can see, we are in a time where we have allowed ourselves to be fooled or to be lulled to sleep, I like to say, in relation to the propaganda that is presented on a daily basis, all day long, every single day, 24 hours a day. Like, okay, for example, last year, I noticed when I just noticed, all of a sudden one day I noticed that it was at night. I think it was like 3 in the morning. And I was like, you know, I can go on my phone, on my black mirror at any moment in time, literally. Around the world, there will be somebody plugged in to this virtual reality at any moment in time, 24/7. All I got to do is hop on and enter that world like I am right now. I'm in that world right now. I'm in the virtual reality, and we're connecting through the black mirror. Right? It's fascinating to me. Real human connection has been facilitated by technology, and it has expanded our reach, our personal reach. And at the same time, it has put us in a situation where we are vulnerable and we are actually prey, Prey, to things outside of ourselves, right? So in order for us to gain back our sovereignty and our independence, we almost have to unhook and like disconnect from the reality that connects us in order to feel connected energetically to the earth, to other individuals. And at the same time, the way that we connect is through our phones, through communication. So our whole system of communication has been hijacked by a few people that then, trickle down throughout society, and everybody's hooked into it. And those that aren't, which is very few at this point, because the Wi-Fi is all over the planet now, which was a goal that Mark Zuckerberg announced right in the beginning of Facebook in 2007, I think, was that he was going to make sure that the world was connected. And it was such an admirable thing that he was doing, And I remember thinking to myself when I heard that, oh, dear God. Just like, oh, dear God. What's happening? What's happening? And all I could think about was the indigenous tribes and how their lives were going to change. And I got really sad because they've lived without it for so long, and they've had such a sacred life. And now their lives are being destroyed. And they're holding on for dear life. And I feel it, I see it. And they're who hold things sacred on this planet, in the forests of the Amazon, in the jungles, up north near the poles, the Sami tribe, right? There's some really strong indigenous tribes on this planet still, and I'm so grateful for them because they hold the sacredness of life and of the earth. And now it's our job, in my personal opinion, to hold the sacredness of life again and to connect all the ecosystems, all the systems, all the beings with each other in a way that they can't be disconnected through technology. And yet we can utilize technology to our advantage to communicate. But it's also really important that we communicate in our hearts and in our minds telepathically with each other. And they've kept that part of us offline, distinctly and purposely, right? So it's important to remember that, because where we're going, we don't need any of this. Yes, it would be great to have it, but it's not necessary. We lived without it for the last, up until 20 years ago, right? And in the last 20 years, we've hit hyperspeed. But where we're going, we're coming back to the earth. We're coming back to the sacredness of life. We are headed in that direction. And so what's happening right now is we're flushing out that which is out of alignment with spirit, with source, with the true harmony and peace of grace in the universe and on the earth. And we're coming back home to Gaia. So no matter what it looks like on the outside, no matter what's playing out, remember that on the other side of this tunnel, it's super bright, super bright, super bright. And in my heart, if I feel into my heart, I know that to be the truth. I know that this is temporary. And it's not a short temporary. We're going to be in this tunnel for a while, you guys. Because what is necessary is for the illusion to collapse. And once that happens, the light can flood fully into the consciousness of humanity, into the people, and to the earth. And take all that other stuff offline. And we can restore our original divine blueprint and come back into harmony with ourselves and with each other. And I trust that. I love you so much. Thank you for being here with me. Thank you for listening. I don't know who's watching, but that's okay. Just know that I love you. Keep breathing. Keep breathing. Deep breaths. Life force energy into your body in every moment. You'll be glad you did. Loving yourself. Okay. I will catch you later. Bye.